Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's session on Visibility Wins from Data to Decisions at British American Tobacco in collaboration with Springtime Technologies. To quickly introduce myself, my name's Beth and I'm an Editor and Digital Content Manager here at SSON, and I'll be moderating today's session. But as always, we do have some housekeeping for you all before we jump into the main presentation. Firstly, this session is being recorded and you will have access to the recording after the event, but to interact live, there are a few tools for you to note. Firstly, we have the Q&A function for you to pose questions to our speakers, and we always encourage you to do so, as we do try and reserve time at the end of our webinars for an audience Q&A. But any unanswered questions will be addressed post-webinar via written responses from the Springtime team. Next, there is an attendee chat where you can leave comments. Beyond this, if you have any technical issues, you can also message my colleagues or myself in this chat, and we'll do our very best to help you out. It's not easy presenting online, especially when you can't see the audience. So we've included the reaction tab where you can send emojis such as a thumbs up or a smiley face. So please do make use of that function, as we love to see your reactions coming through in real time. And finally, we have our resources tab on the bottom right of the screen with some great additional resources from our speakers, the sponsor and the SSO network. You can also learn more about Steve and Rob through this tab and connect with them on LinkedIn. So to support today's session, we do have a copy of the slides for you to download as a PDF, as well as a link to the recent SSON and Springtime Technologies Essentials report on Beyond KPIs, the visibility blueprint GPOs need to drive AP transformation. So be sure to check those out. Now today we're joined by Rob Bullen, who is the Group Head of BAT Global Business Services and is a visionary supply chain and shared services leader with over 25 years of experience driving world-class service, user experience and operational efficiency for global organisations. Known for leading major transformation programs, he has earned external recognition for innovations in process improvement and digital enablement. Rob is committed to developing talent and advancing capability across teams to support continuous improvement and sustainable business performance. We're also joined by Steve Standring, who is the go-to-market and procure-to-pay specialist with 30 years of experience, 25 of them in P2P and shared services. He currently leads GTM and sales at Springtime Technologies, where the platform processes large and often complex organisations. For example, over 10 million invoices across 50 ERPs and over 75 countries, with touchless rates exceeding 80%. Steve helps organisations achieve high volume automation through process mining, compliance-first workflows and agentic AI, minimising exceptions and accelerating ROI. And later in the session, we'll be joined by Jasna Janic, who is a solutions architect at Springtime Technologies, who will show us what visibility looks like in real time in a little later in the session. So without further ado, that's enough from me, and I'll hand over to Steve to kick us off.
Hello, everybody. Looking forward to this session. So just to start with, I'm going to spend just 1 minute on Springtime Technologies. Many people have not yet heard of us, despite the fact we've been around for a while. And I think that's largely speaking because we are DACH region based, although we're now global. And we've never had sales or marketing until last October. So we've sort of worked by stealth across incredibly well-known organizations where we do 100% of their AP automation. This is just a small subset of them, and we've grown purely through references. So it's quite an interesting story. Bethany just introduced the people, so there you can see what they look like. So we can jump past that. I want to start off today by just looking at AP over the last 25 years. I've been steeped in it, and I think AP automation has been, generally speaking, quite disappointing. So one of the goals of today is to build back some trust into what AP automation can do and make it somewhat more strategic. And then we're going to get onto the main body of what we're going to do today, which is Rob introducing BAT's kind of reinvention journey and how they're going to ensure that they hit the efficiency goals and productivity goals that they will be looking for. Then we'll look a little bit about how we actually set up outcome-based pricing with suppliers and what you need to measure to achieve that. And then we'll show a live version of what that can look like in real life, because it's quite tricky. So first of all, though, Bethany's going to jump back in to run a poll for us.
Brilliant, thank you, Steve. And as always, we like to keep you guys on your toes. So we do have 3 related questions to kick us off. So firstly, we'd love to know, have you outsourced your AP or GBS operations or components of them? Yes or no? Related to that, how many formal productivity goals have you established for AP? Is it 0, maybe 1 to 2, 3 to 5, or more than 5? And finally, of these goals, what percentage have you passed on to your suppliers as contractual targets? Is it 0 to 25%, 25 to 50%, 50 to 75%, or maybe over 75%? So we'll give you a minute or so to answer that question, or those questions, should I say. So have you outsourced your AP or GBS operations or components of them? How many formal productivity goals have you established for AP? And finally, of those goals, what percentage have you passed on to your suppliers as contractual targets? So I'll give you just a couple more seconds to answer that. And you
Thanks, Bethany.
should
And I think the
see the
clue,
result.
okay, great. I think the clue to where we're going to be getting to in this presentation is that last question, because not many people have actually committed their suppliers to their outcomes contractually, which is one of the things we're going to discuss today a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So we can see 83% of our attendees today have opted for 0 to 25% have been passed on as contractual goals, targets, sorry, which is really interesting. But a more
Yeah.
even split between those that have and have not outsourced their AP or GBS operations. You know, a 43% said yes and 57% said no. And again, quite a variation in how many formal productivity goals the attendees have established in their AP functions. So 21% actually have 0, 37% with 1 to 2, 32% with 3 to 5, and just 11% with over 5. So I'll hand back to you, Steve. Thank you for everyone who answered that first poll.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody's interested, we can send out these poll questions so you can kind of benchmark against the rest of our audience today. So let's just start off by looking at the history of AP. I'm starting really around about 2000, which is when shared services, or just before 2000, when shared services started being set up. And if you remember back, if any of you are old enough to, unfortunately, I think I am, I think maybe Rob is as well. We started off with OCR to help really do data entry, and it was really poor. If you got 50% accuracy across the board, you were doing quite well. Then e-invoicing started around 2000 and in closed networks, and that looked like the panacea for being able to create invoices that would match against purchase orders. But suppliers didn't really like engaging in that, and most ERPs didn't support this AP process of matching particularly well. So we really struggled to match invoices to purchase orders or manage a non-purchase order process as well. We had very little process transparency, so it was quite difficult to see where we should start improving our processes. So the consulting firms did a lot of work around assessing processes. We very rarely had an end-to-end view. High churn of staff. I guess we were looking at probably in the early days, probably less than 6,000 invoices per FTE per year. And it was very difficult to then engage in high value services like dynamic discounting or contract compliance or early payments, so on and so forth. So we were looking at labor arbitrage, we were looking at outsourcing. And I think over the last 20 years, these things have improved. And AI has improved them quite dramatically over the last few years. But I think a lot of AP projects now have been parked as they're kind of stable. And I think AP has been a little bit cynical about suppliers offering fantastic numbers on what we can achieve, as far as touchless processing and stuff is concerned. So that's something we want to try and address today a little bit. So once AI came in, we suddenly had a much easier way of having a higher performance. We remember that before AI, we couldn't match things like units of measure or purchase orders that maybe had multiple lines and an invoice came back with consolidated lines. We weren't all of those were manual exceptions that we had to deal with. And AI's pretty much fixed that if you're onto a modern platform. So we are now seeing matching rates or touchless rates at above 80% quite quickly. And now, because certainly on a platform like the Springtime technology platform, Invoice Track, we are seeing all of the invoice volume, both indirect, direct, and intercompany as well, going through that platform. And that means that there's really good visibility of processes, in-depth process mining, and a way to truly measure performance. So we look at outcomes of matching rates that are high, up to 40,000 invoices per FTE, and that growing based on continual improvement using process mining, and compliance and risk management really efficiently around tax and e-invoicing, and the ability to automate high value services, things like contract compliance to make sure you pay to contract rather than the invoice data, or potentially early payment discounts because you can process much quicker. We're also seeing capture rates and data capture being very highly accurate these days, which means the suppliers don't have to join complex networks if they don't want to. And it means that you can enroll far more of the tail into dynamic discounting type systems and the rest of it. So that means that you have the aspiration now of having a small, high-performing AP team with compliance managed and suppliers accountable. The one thing that's left, though, is I still think suppliers hear this kind of pitch from people like us and go, bit cynical. And the other thing is that procurement systems still don't really support the AP matching process very well, although platforms will help with that. And we're all a bit concerned with the e-invoicing mandates. So that's kind of a very, very quick history. One thing I want to take forward just before we bring Rob on board is that AP can be seen as the engine room in the source to pay process. And I think people have parked AP a little bit because it's doing what it needs to do, and it's kind of stable. But think about the fact that contract compliance, you might agree contracts and discounts and stuff with suppliers, but those get enforced within AP. All of the early payments that you might want to get from your suppliers through early payments, that process is still managed at AP level. So AP has the data, AP has the ability to drive these higher value services, if you like. And it also, because of the data that goes through, has the ability to give you some serious visibility feeding into the whole source to pay process. So I want us to think today a little bit, or I'm suggesting that one of the things we can think about is AP as a little bit more strategically important than perhaps we see it today. And we will talk a little bit more about that as we go forwards. Right, Rob, I'm going to pass on to you to give us a little overview of BAT, and then we can have a little chat on how you're going to hit all the productivity goals that you have set.
Super. Well, thanks for the intro, Steve. And Bethany, some very kind words there. I'm not sure you were talking about me, but pleasure to be on the webinar today. So yeah, quick introduction. Rob Bullen, I lead global business services at BAT, British American Tobacco. I have done for the last 3 years. Spent most of my career leading shared services in food and beverage and pharmaceuticals, and now here at BAT. Again, some quick stats around BAT. You might not know much about us as a company, but we have nearly 50,000 employees, around 25 billion of annual revenue, around 11 billion of profit. We are growing and moving away from combustibles or cigarettes into the new category, less harmful products, and now close to 4 billion coming from things like modern oral and vaping devices. And we have around 64 manufacturing facilities around the world, in total around 30,000 suppliers as well. So we're quite a complex business, but there's just a few stats on BAT. Again, some of our products, I'm sure, I'm delighted to see we've got around 70 people on the webinar. I'm sure some of you use our products over time, and hopefully enjoy using our products safely. So GBS, what does that mean for BAT? We're close to 4,500 people, so a pretty significant, sizable organization. We've just actually been through a major transformation. So we've gone from captive, so internal, and actually we just on March 1st transferred all of our operations to Accenture. So we sold the business. So we sold 7 global hubs to Accenture. We moved all of the people with those hubs. And Accenture now run our operations for us. I'm actually dialing in here from India on the call today, where I'm visiting our new operational hub out here in India. So very well established, 25 years old, very well integrated with the business. At time of sort of writing, we had around 3,000, but we will be over 4,000 by the end of this year. Our hubs are probably fairly similar. If any of you run either procure to pay or overall GBS, I'm sure you've got a similar footprint. Latin America, we've got a couple of hubs. We run everything from finance to HR to marketing, some legal services, even some supply chain services. So very broad activities we run within GBS. A couple of centers in Latin America, a couple of centers in Europe, one in Malaysia, and then perhaps not common, one in Pakistan. But we have a huge business in Pakistan, so it made sense for us to locate some folks there. And now, as of a few months ago, we've got over 400 people out here in India providing a center of scale operations for us with Accenture. So that's a footprint, quite complex. If you think about procure to pay as a whole, we've probably got around 300 people servicing VAT and procure to pay, majority of which are in the sort of invoice to pay transactional space, but we are growing in the procurement space as well, starting with low value sourcing, e-auctions, and now actually moving into category spend and category procurement activities. So pretty much now covering the full scope of procure to pay within our GBS locations. So
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. So, Rob, one of the things that intrigues me, I've known BAT for, I guess, some time, and you've had all sorts of projects within GBS around automation and efficiency gains. What got you to the point? What were the issues that you wanted to address and the goals that you were looking to achieve that forced the Accenture deal?
Yeah, look, I think a lack of ability to drive productivity. It's harder to do it to yourself. And a realization that, particularly with AI on the horizon, we weren't going to invest in AI for back office or operational requirements. We were going to invest it in consumer insights, in product development, in marketing, as most CPGs I'm sure are doing as well. So we just hadn't got access to the technology. We weren't driving the productivity. And therefore, we wanted a partner to help us digitize our processes. When it comes to sort of P2P in particular, we've got a great chief procurement officer, and he and I had a number of conversations when I joined. And the reality was, it wasn't P2P. We weren't thinking about the supplier journey. We thought about invoice processing as a finance function, and we thought about procurement as a supply chain operations function, and we didn't join the dots. So the realization was that we weren't giving the suppliers a great experience. We were losing insights, and we weren't actually very compliant. So compliance is table stakes. But what we also thought that, P2P could be a competitive advantage for BAT if we joined the dots and made it a sort of horizontal process. So that's exactly what we did, and we co-sponsored a sort of technology program to really drive value out of P2P. And then that's landed ultimately with Accenture to help us execute.
And other goals of this, productivity gains are a significant goal in this, I guess, within an environment where, AP's got some legal requirements and around compliance and tax and all the rest of it. So how much of the focus of what you're doing here is productivity gains, and how much of it is value add services, and how does that kind of work out?
But we started with value add in mind. So we had a terrible supplier onboarding process, 30,000 suppliers. It was cumbersome. It was lengthy to onboard suppliers. We struggled to connect contracts with discounting. Our procurement team didn't even know if we were paying suppliers on time. So there was a sort of lack of visibility and therefore inability to drive value add. With the Accenture contractors, I think 50% of the audience here have outsourced. It tends to be guaranteed productivity, right? So the outsource provider will guarantee to reduce your headcount and processing by, I don't know, let's say 50% over the period of the contract. The how to do that is the interesting thing. So how do you deliver productivity, not only for the people processing invoices, but for the entire business, so PO creation, etc. The how is the difficult bit, and
Yeah.
maybe that's something we talk about next. But
Yeah. Well, I guess the other thing that's intriguing about what you've done is that you've committed your suppliers to productivity. I've seen this as one of the first relationships I've seen where your key suppliers are united and are working towards the same productivity goals, and that their contracts obligate them to achieve those goals. Otherwise, they get penalized financially. How did you
yeah,
go about doing that? Because I think that's quite an unusual way. We really like that way to go to market, because I think suppliers should be obligated to deliver on their their pitches, if you like.
yeah.
What drove that, and how did you manage to achieve that?
Yeah, so we, as part of this sort of procure to pay digitization project that I co-sponsored with our CPO, we bought 5 different technologies, 5 different companies. So one of the things that I still observe in the P2P space is it's very fragmented, right?
Mm,
Suppliers solve certain problems for you, but none of them can supply all of it. So we bought an orchestration tool, we bought a autonomous sourcing tool. We bought a statement reconciliation tool, and obviously we bought Springtime
mm,
to drive a lot of productivity and visibility within our invoice processing, which is a very manual activity. So we had currently 25% touchless in invoice processing. That's
mm.
terrible. And that's not without a huge amount of effort over the years, but that's as good as we got, partly because of the complexity, partly because of government portals, etc. But we got to
Yeah.
a very mediocre level of invoice automation. And so our partner Accenture said, you should do better. 70, 80% is where we want to get you. And they had a proposal for us. And so what we did is what I now call the sort of three in a box model. And I said, look, I own the tech stack, the solution architecture for BAT. I'm not just going to deploy, RPAs, AIs, agentics randomly. We need
Mm.
to make sure they fit within our solution architecture. So we went to market together. We said, look, this is the problem statement. I'm at 25% touchless. I want to be at 75%. And we expect that will deliver, I mean, it's very close to 100 role efficiencies in the process.
Mm.
Accenture were on the hook to deliver that contractually, but we knew we needed a solution. And together we decided what is the best solution for BAT. Um, and therefore it's imperative that whoever we assign from a solution architecture point of view is also in this together with us. We've all bought
Mm.
technology over the years where you get a good sell and a poor delivery, as you started the session today. Um, I won't sign a contract now with a software provider unless they've got skin in the game.
Yeah.
So that kind of outcome-based pricing, fees at risk, it's table stakes. And you're now signing, in BAT's case, you're signing a contract with BAT and with Accenture, and Accenture want to know that you're going to deliver the productivity that they've promised me. So I think it's quite an elegant solution. I think the industry's
Mm.
very rapidly moving to outcome-based pricing, and I would say about time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think to have all parties working to the same goal makes a huge amount of sense, even though it takes a bit of organizing. So just to finish off this bit of the conversation, you mentioned a few things there about AI, so there's definitely another webinar we need to do around responsible use of AI in AP. Um, from a perspective of having outcome-based pricing and outcomes well defined, that presumably means that you need kind of a single source of truth, but you also need to be measuring what you need to be measuring kind of needs to be agreed between the parties. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so again, I think it may differ slightly if you're either in an outsourced operation or you're running this 100% yourself. But in an outsourced operation, that single source of truth, you need to monitor that touchless rate, and it's
Mm,
actually traditionally not an easy thing to get to. But we know we were at 25%. If I get to 75%, that's a 50% increase in touchless, and therefore a very significant reduction in the resources that we need to manually process invoices. One of the things I like about Springtime, and again, every supplier hopefully has a similar sort of approach to this, but you need the tool that you buy to also track
mm,
the volumes and the outcomes that you're looking for, and then it becomes very formulaic to understand, did we achieve what we hoped to achieve? And then actually I hold the supplier operationally accountable for now extract the savings because we've shown that the tool has delivered the automation we were expecting. So I think you're going to come on to an invoice track demo, but that visibility, that one source of truth is imperative if you're going to hold a supplier accountable to outcome-based
Yeah.
pricing.
Absolutely. So the interesting thing for me is picking the right productivity target, the KPI, if you like, or maybe several of them, because a touchless target, I think some organizations culturally are a bit nervous about touchlessness, so they may only eyeball an invoice in AP, but it might only take a second. But that's no
Yeah.
longer a touchless process. So there are other measures as well, aren't there? I mean, you can look at invoices per FTE, you can put the amount of minutes per invoice. There's a number of different targets that we could have. Although touchless seems to be the most common one out there at the moment. Were there other ones that you looked at, or is touchless the core one?
Well, across the P2P process, yes, there are many. I mean, if we think about, supplier contacts and calls, mostly it's about, did you get my invoice and when will I get paid? So
Yeah,
in some other
yeah,
areas, we're thinking about, just sheer volume of supplier contacts, how much were auto solved rather than went through to a person. So I think supplier help desk, supplier onboarding time, cycle times, as you say, invoice
mm,
volume per FTE, all of these things holistically should give you a good picture of whether you're getting the outcomes you want. But it was specifically to springtime, obviously, we wanted to automate invoice processing, and therefore I'm primarily measuring, did I automate invoice processing, which is what
yeah.
invoice track, certainly gives us. So.
Okay, that's been great. What I think I'd like to do now is just jump into what visibility can look like, because I think this has been one of the challenges in P2P. People spend a lot of money on process mining or putting business intelligence stuff in there, but having a single source out of the box does make this easier. So if we spend 10 minutes on that, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer some questions, because I'm sure people have many for you. So let me just jump into a little bit on visibility. But just before we do that, I just want to explain how the platform really works, because it's pretty simple, but it'll kind of make things sensible. It'll make sense to everybody. The first thing is that if you want a single source of truth, everything has to go through it. So that's obvious. So from the left-hand side here, what we do with Invoice Track is we can ingest any type of invoice. We can manage the e-invoicing gateways. We can provide data capture, or we can integrate into other data capture stuff. We can receive PDFs, emails. We don't really care what's ingested, and we don't want AP to even know which is the difference, from the different channels that come in, unless they need to know. What we do then is we extract all the data, including email information, attachments. Then we do the matching process. We make sure that all of the tax and compliance stuff is correct. And then we have a kind of a quality gate looking at trends and stuff, because you suddenly get an invoice that's massively bigger than one that you've ever received from that supplier before. We'll highlight those kind of things. We're using a lot of AI in there to do the matching, which we're not going to show you today. But if anybody's interested in seeing how AI's developed over the years, from matching different line items, aggregated PAs to multiple lines, or whatever it is, we can show that stuff quite quickly, and that's pretty standard stuff now for us. We train the system with 18 months of past invoice work to make sure that the system understands the trends and the suppliers, which means that as part of that quality gate, we can stop fraud and duplicate payments and so on and so forth. We provide workflow. And then finally, the thing that we're going to go on to now is after we've posted, we then have a rich view of everything that's happened in there, which gives us what we're about to see now, which is the visibility, process mining, KPI management, and kind of benchmarks that you need to drive continuous improvement and hit the kind of goals that we're committed to here. So let me pass this over to Yasna, who's going to spend 10 or 12 minutes just showing what this looks like, and then we should have time for questions. Yasna, over to you. Do I need to stop sharing?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm stopping sharing, then you can
Perfect.
share.
Then I will share. Thank you. Here we go. So our reporting tool within InvoiceTrack is called Beachwalk. We have like 70 to 80 standard reports, but we can also always make some customized reports. As already explained by Steve, we have all the like 100% of the incoming invoices which are processed in InvoiceTrack. It doesn't matter if it's electronic invoice, paper, or PDF. But on top, we have also the master data and the transactional data, which makes it for us very easy to have here general reports and the overall overview also of the data quality. One of our reports, for example, is this joint mission KPI report, where we can define with our customers together what are the KPIs they want to reach. And here they see on a very high level if these KPIs are reached or not. For example, here we see there is a KPI or a target of 80% of touchless, and we see that we are nearly reaching it, but there is still some actions to be done. Or we see here a target of 4 days of processing time, meaning the document should be posted within 4 days. So from invoice ingestion until posting. Here we are even below the target, so here we are fine. If I'm interested for some more details, I can also drill down. So here in the KPI analysis, so I can see on company code level or even on vendor level, what is causing me not to be able to reach my targets. So I can really drill down and here see where I can adapt some processes, where I have some gaps, and what I can do to get my targets reached. Another report, for example, is our process mining report. So here we see all the processes and workflows available in InvoiceTrack. So how the invoice went through the system. I can refresh it. Here we are. So here I see every and each process flow which is available in the system, and I also see how many documents went through which process. So I see how many documents have been processed completely automatically by the system, how many documents have been rejected by the business back to accounts payable. And on top, I see where my team is spending most of their time. For example, here I see that for nearly 4% of all my incoming documents, which is really not a lot, it takes 10% of my total accounts payable time to get these documents processed. And also here I can drill down even on field level and on process level. So here I see it takes accounts payable 10% or 25 days of their whole working time to manually stop documents. And then on top, I can see on field level in which field they are spending this time. So in this case, it's a lot of effort for them to manually put notes when they are stopping documents, and then I can fix this process, get this process automated. I can even create rules in the system to get these documents stopped completely automatically, so I don't need accounts payable to do it. Or I can, for example, create templates so that accounts payable just only select one template when the document is stopped and don't need to manually type in every and each note for every and each document. One more report is, for example, a management report. It's like a benchmarking report. Here I can even compare myself with other customers and with the best-in-class touchless rates. So I can see, for example, that in Spain, my touchless rate is not, I mean, it's not bad, but also not pretty good. And I see that the best-in-class would be nearly 96%. So here I can then focus on this country to see how I can optimize my process, how I can get this automated and make the best outcome to have it there. One more report, for example, is also a payment and risk report. So as we also receive back the payment data from the ERP systems, we know if the documents have been paid on time or not. So here I see also the reasons why documents have been paid overdue, for example, because they have been received late. So that's then something I need maybe to do some supplier training, or they have been paid overdue because the payment was done late, or the business approval took so long. That's why they have been paid overdue, or some other reasons. But on top, we also have some risk prediction. So you can see here documents which are running into the risk to be paid late because the payment due date is reached soon, and we know from the historical processing that usually from this vendor the documents take like 5 days to be processed, or the business takes several days to get these documents approved. And based on this data, we can predict where we are having the risk to pay the documents late, and then we can proactively here do some like pushing the business, for example, to have the documents paid on time and to do not pay too late our documents. Or, for example, if we have some cash discounts, so that we can prioritize this to get the cash discounts also saved for us. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, and if you stop sharing, I will
Yeah, sure.
share again and we can go through some questions. We were going to do another poll, but I'm actually thinking as time is moving so quickly that I think we should go straight to questions because those will be more useful. So Bethany, I don't know if you want to run that. I guess one of the things I wanted to say just before the questions, or really to finish off from our perspective, was that, outcome commitments, you've got to follow best practice. You need a single source of truth, and we need agreed KPIs. And from our perspective, we're happy looking at, as we discussed before with Rob, on ensuring that you achieve your goals by having some skin in the game. Key takeaways: automation still needed. I think AP should be seen as more strategic than it potentially is. It is the engine room of source to pay. Modern tech is a bit of a game changer, and visibility is the missing piece. So on that bombshell, we've got time for a few questions.
Yes, we do indeed. Firstly, thank you, Steve, Yasna and Rob, for a great session. And what I might do as well is that second poll you mentioned, Steve, I'm just going to have it running in the background whilst we tackle a couple of these Q&A questions, so we can do both at once to be ultra productive. So whilst we give you all a minute to answer that poll question, I will jump straight into the Q&A. So the first question I can see is from Vivek, who would like to know, for you, Rob, what is your long-term vision of outsourcing a function such as AP is it not complex adding another layer in the team? For example, if performance takes a hit and complaints from the business start coming in?
Yeah, super. Thanks, Bethany. And thanks, Vivek. I saw you posted a couple of questions. Maybe we can connect on LinkedIn and have a deeper chat about pros and cons of outsourcing. Look, our ambition was really to outsource entire processes. And that's one of the reasons we've gone from invoice processing to now include pretty much most of the indirect procurement activities. So we will have a center of excellence type approach, and technology far more effective when you deploy it in one location than across, in our case, 130 different markets. Is it the ultimate aim of the program to just simply get headcount reduction? No. We want to be easy to do business with. We want to have, procure to pay as a competitive advantage. We want to have one of the best supplier journeys and supplier experiences in the industry. And we think a partner will help us to get there. What happens in 10 years' time, who knows? But for now, this kind of partnering for success, as the project is called, we believe will, accelerate and be a catalyst for change within the procure to pay function. What was really key, though, was having the chief procurement officer as a co-sponsor, because I don't think you can transform a process if one party that owns half the process isn't interested. So that was the game changer from day one, which was almost 3 years ago. A quick comment I saw in the invoice track that late payment of invoices was causing, sorry, late receipt of invoices was causing late payment. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was move to invoice receipt date. So why penalize yourself on the date that it says on the invoice? For me, the clock starts ticking when we receive it. So again, maybe some of you are looking at that and happy to have a chat.
Great, thank you, Rob. And then jumping straight into the next question, I can see we've got one from Sandra who would like to know, did you build in technology innovation into your outsourcing contract?
Yes, but it's very wedded to the overall program. So if you think about it from a outsource provider point of view, how do they deliver all of these efficiencies? It has to have a large part of technology enablement. It's not just a labor arbitrage play, right? We could have done that ourselves. So the majority of savings come from technology and disrupting the process. And so it was a kind of it was a critical element. If you know, on the one hand, Accenture says, well, you can have all these savings. On the other, but you're going to need to invest. And so we've had a very significant investment pot in the program, fully funded by the savings, by the way. But it's the enabler for the productivity and efficiency. But again, rather than us piloting and testing and buying without the expertise, we very much tap into Accenture's knowledge and experience of having done this for many other clients. But technology is more than half of the savings.
Great, thank you. And we've got another really strong question from Vivek, so thank you very much for your questions, who says productivity sometimes means headcount reduction, but I have seen a lot of times when vendors are reducing headcount, the ops team get under quite a bit of pressure. So would you be keeping tab of this pressure as your KPIs improve in the dashboard, but maybe on ground the teams are still struggling to pull things as headcount reduces? So how do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, look, Vivek, it's a great question. If I think back 20 years, I've stopped factories before by not paying suppliers and them putting us on stop and materials not arriving. So, that is way beyond any savings I can deliver in the sort of source to sell or procure to pay process. So first and foremost, you've got to run the business and you've got to make sure in the P2P space that suppliers are delivering what you want, where you want it, and when you need it. That's again table stakes. But look, we measure all of the KPIs you'd expect us to around things like paid on time, invoice processing volume, accuracy. But we also measure supplier experience. So we want to know that our suppliers are seeing the difference in the way we're investing and transforming our processes. But we also do internal, net promoter scores and CSAT scores that go out to our internal users. So what I'm hoping, Vivek, is very quickly, either through an escalation, we've got a governance process, obviously, or through those CSAT scores that people tell us that work is flowing back into the business. It's a very real and almost likely outcome of outsourcing is that work flows back into the business, and we can't have that because that's not the point. So yes, we're measuring it the best we can. If you've got any ideas, Vivek, please do share them with me. I'd love to hear your experience.
Great, thank you, Rob. And I'm conscious of time, but I do think we can squeeze in one more question. And I have seen a couple questions come through regarding audit, so I think maybe that's a good place to finish the session. So from Juliana, she would love to know, how do you ensure accuracy for audit when using AI, which can be probabilistic versus rule-based? I already butchered that word then.
That should I take that one? I think this is really important. Our approach to this is when we set up Invoice Track, we use AI to basically assess whether policies work or not. So as we're looking at historical data, maybe 18 months worth, we can look at any policies that have been set up. So you've got policy documents, or if you haven't got any, we can write the documents or use them from a library. And we apply that to your historical data, and it'll come back and go, 85% of this policy apply to the invoice set that you've given us, and that should apply to those 85%. And we run AI to help produce the policies for the invoices. Now, those policies then in production are not run by AI. So the policies that we produce are human readable and machine readable. But in actual production, in the production part of AP, other than the Copilot stuff where we use AI, we're really just applying those policies using machine code. And this is going to be really important because if we all ask ChatGPT the same question, it would come up with 4 different answers based on, or 3 different answers based on the fact that we have a different history there. So we don't think, if you want to be accountable in AP, that you want too much. You want to be really careful about how you use AI. And so we're taking a very responsible approach to that. And ultimately, as I said, you use it where you can use it. And of course, the other thing there means that in your day-to-day AP, because you're running your policies through machine code, you're not using agents and tokens, so that keeps the price down. You're not using so much computer power. So that would be one of the answers I would give to being responsible in how you manage AI in accounts payable. So you utilize it, do as much as you can, and then you do something that you just ensures that you remain auditable going forwards. Because I don't know how many of us on this webinar have been audited, but if you fail, it's not a pretty sight, and it can be very, very expensive. So we really need to be very risk averse as far as that's concerned.
Great, thanks, Steve. And I did actually see a thumbs up come through as you mentioned about the experience of an audit. So it's definitely resonating. I think that's a good place for us to finish off the Q&A. But for anyone who does have any unanswered Q&A questions, we will connect with the team for some written responses post-event, so not to worry. But on that note, I would love to once again thank Steve, Rob and Yasna for joining us today for such a great session and answering those Q&A questions like pros. It's always great to have a bit more of a dialogue and conversation about these topics that everyone is very concerned about. And for everyone watching, thank you for taking the time to join us today, and be sure to firstly check out the post-session survey that will pop up on your screen in just a moment, as we always love to hear your thoughts, as well as the related content, including a copy of a PDF of the slides for you to download. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.